Hey there, I'm David, the editor of Imaging Resource, and this is our guide to the best budget Fujifilm lenses as of the end of 2025. Now, if you shoot Fujifilm, you already know that one of the biggest strengths of the system is the excellent glass that Fujifilm makes, but a lot of Fujifilm lenses are really expensive, and we're going to help you build a really capable lens kit without going broke. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the best budget lenses for Fujifilm shooters in a number of categories. You can find that list of categories down below with chapter markers so you can jump right to the ones that you want to see. X series uses an APS-C sensor, which has a crop factor of 1.5 times compared to full frame. That means a 35mm lens on a Fujifilm camera gives you the same field of view as about 52mm on a full frame camera. It's also important to know with the conversion to full frame that there is also a 1.5 times crop on the aperture, sort of. An aperture lets in the same amount of light no matter what the platform is. APS-C, full frame, medium format camera, f4 lets in the same amount of light, but there is a 1.5 times crop when it comes to the background defocus capability. So if you're shooting with something that's an f2.8 in APS-C, it's going to look about f4.2 in a full frame camera. Let's start with wide angle prime. Wide angle primes are all about capturing big scenes from landscapes to city streets and even interior real estate photography. And Fujifilm makes it really easy to do that without emptying your wallet. The Fuji XF16mm f2.8 RWR is a 60mm lens on the APS-C that gives you a 24mm equivalent field of view in full frame. It's tiny, it's lightweight, which makes it perfect for travel and street work where you want something discreet. When I am traveling, I do not want it to look like I have an expensive camera, and this lens keeps the system small enough to not look like you spent a lot of money. The autofocus is quick and it's silent. The lens is also weather sealed, which makes it, again, a good lens for travel. You won't get the shallow depth of field of Fuji's more expensive and faster f1.4 lenses, but for portability and price, it's an excellent pick. It usually sells for about $450. I think this lens is for Fuji shooters who want a compact, durable, wide-angle prime for travel and everyday walk-around shooting. Okay, let's move to wide-angle zooms. Sometimes a prime lens isn't the right choice because it's not flexible enough with its focal length, and that's where a wide zoom comes in. The Fujifilm XF 10-24mm f4R OIS WR covers a 10-24mm range, which works out to be about 15-36mm on a full-frame camera. That gives you true ultra-wide coverage at the short end and a versatile wide normal at the long end. The consistent f4 aperture means that your exposure stays the same no matter what your zoom is, and the built-in stabilization pairs really nicely with Fuji's in-body image stabilization for handheld shooting at slower shutter speeds. In other words, what you lose at the f4 aperture in terms of light gathering, you make up for with the ability to hold the camera still in lower light with lower ISOs. The build is really professional and the camera is weather sealed, although it's definitely larger than Fuji's primes. The main compromise is that f4 won't give you great subject separation or low light ability compared to faster glass. Pricing is usually about $400 if you shop carefully. Now let's talk about standard primes, which are the backbone of many photographers' kits. They give you a really natural perspective for portraits, everyday scenes, and street shooting, and they usually deliver more sharpness and speed than zooms at the same price. The Fujifilm XC35mm f2 gives you a 53mm equivalent field of view right in the classic normal lens range. It's lightweight, inexpensive, and it delivers sharp images with fast and quiet autofocus. The lens is made of plastic and has no weather sealing, but for the cost it's hard to beat. You can usually find it new for around $250, although it's often out of stock and you may have to get a used model, which is then even cheaper. I think that this lens is best for beginners who want their very first sharp but affordable prime lens. If you want a more classic Fujifilm lens, you can go for the Fujifilm XF 35mm f1.4R. This is a 53mm equivalent in full frame. The autofocus here is a bit older and slower, so it's not ideal for sports or fast action, but the rendering and background defocus or bokeh have a really distinctive look that people love. It's not weather sealed and it's more expensive than the XC version, but it comes in about $700. It is still a classic lens. I think this lens is best for shooters who want image characteristics and don't mind trading speed for the quality of the look. For budget portrait work, the TT Artisan 56mm f1.4 AF lens gives you about an 84mm equivalent, which is the perfect short telephoto portrait lens perspective. It's sharp, it gives you pleasant background blur, and it has reliable autofocus, though not quite as reliable or as fast as Fujifilm's own lenses. The build is not premium, but the price is brand new. It's about $130. I think this lens is great for portrait photographers who want to get a classic 85mm look and don't want to pay more than, say, a dozen Starbucks coffees for it. Next up, we have standard zooms, and those are lenses that cover everyday shooting, landscapes, portraits, and travel in one package. The Fujifilm XF 18-55mm f2.8-4R LMOIS covers 18-55mm APS-C, which is about 27-82 equivalent in full frame. That means you're getting a wide-angle to short telephoto in a single compact lens. It's sharper and faster than kit zooms are, and you will find at f2.8 at the wide end and f4 at the long tele end that the autofocus is still quick and silent, and the image stabilization is really good. Even at the f4 at the long end with the optical image stabilization, you can still handhold this lens a lot slower than you could without that, which means you can still shoot at lower ISOs and have really sharp images. Pricing on this lens is typically about $600, although it's often bundled with Fuji bodies, so you get it at the same time. I think this lens is best for Fuji shooters who want one lens to handle everyday use without the compromises you find on most typical kit zoom lenses. Now, portrait primes are lenses that are designed to flatter your subject, giving you a good working distance and a nice separation between the subject and the background. The Fujifilm XF 50mm f2R WR gives you the equivalent of about a 78mm lens, which is perfect for portraits. The lens is compact, weather sealed, it's sharp, and it focuses really quickly. The f2 aperture isn't as fast as Fuji's 56mm f1.2, but it is much smaller and, more importantly, much cheaper. Pricing is usually about $500 for this lens. I think that it is best for photographers who want a reliable, portable portrait prime lens that has weather sealing and makes fantastic images. If you want a portrait lens with maximum background defocus, the Viltrox AF75mm f1.2 XF Pro gives you about 112mm equivalent. That's a little bit longer than the traditional portrait lens focal length, about 85mm, but at a longer focal length, it's really, really good for separation between your subject and your background, and it's the kind of lens I find people using often at weddings and other events where you want to get a long shot on the bride or the groom, and you want to have really nice background defocus. Now, autofocus isn't quite as fast as Fuji's own prime lenses, and the minimal focal distance could be a little bit closer, but it's one of the best third-party portrait options out there for the Fujifilm platform. You can get it new for about $600. I think this lens is perfect for the beginner portrait photographer. That is really hard to say, the perfect beginner photographer. Now, telephoto lenses are where the APS-C system really starts to shine. You get long reach without the same size and weight that you would get from a full-frame camera. Take, for instance, the Fujifilm XF 70-300mm f4 to 5.6 R LMOIS WR, which gives you about 105 to a 450mm equivalent full-frame range. That is a serious telephoto in a relatively compact package. The lens is sharp, it stabilizes, weather sealed, and it focuses quickly. The f4 to f5.6 aperture really limits low light performance, but for wildlife or sports in good light, it is a fantastic choice. It's a lot over our budget category at about $950, but this is a fantastic lens for shooters who want a versatile, travel-friendly telephoto zoom to capture whatever comes in front of you, no matter how far away it is. Okay, so one more budget, not budget lens. The Sigma 100-400mm f5 to 6.3 DG DNOS Contemporary gives you a 150 to 600mm full-frame equivalent. This lens is close to $1,000, but keep in mind 600mm lenses in full-frame formats often cost you $2,000, $3,000, or $4,000. This lens balances reach and portability, although it lacks the weather sealing of Fuji's native lenses. I think this lens is really fantastic for shooters who want super long reach, but also want to keep the size and the weight manageable, which again is why we're putting it in here, even though it's not really budget. Okay, so those are our picks for the best budget lenses you can get for Fujifilm's X-mount system right now. Each one of them has real-world strengths and trade-offs, but together they cover just about any type of shooting that you might want to do with the Fujifilm platform. Links to the lenses are in the description below if you want to check them out or buy one. I've also dropped below a link to the full written version of the buyer's guide on Imaging Resource if you want even more detail, including pros, cons, and all of the specs. If you've got a favorite budget Fuji lens, or if there's one you'd like to see us review, let me know down in the comments. And if you found this helpful, please boop all the buttons below to like and subscribe. For Imaging Resource, I'm David Schloss, and until next time, go out there and give it your best shot.